From The National, this is Trending Middle East. I'm Yasmin Al-Taji. It's Wednesday, April 16th. Here are today's headlines. Jordan said on Tuesday it thwarted plots that threatened its national security. The General Intelligence Department detained 16 people on charges that included manufacturing and importing rockets illegally, as well as possession of explosives. The office said the plots had been monitored since 2021. Here is The National's Khaled Yacoub Oweis reporting from Amman.
The announcement comes as the country is gripped by rage at the Israeli attacks on Gaza. At the same time, the government and officials have been engaged in a balancing act, trying to assuage popular anger regarding the situation in Gaza with the country's commitments. Jordan has a solid long-time alliance with the United States and a 1994 peace treaty with Israel.
The plots included, quote, manufacturing missiles using local tools and others imported from abroad for illegal purposes, possessing explosives and firearms, concealing a missile ready for use, and a project to manufacture drones, it said.
About 30 kilograms, the authorities say, of explosives were seized, and these explosives were sourced from outside, from abroad. In announcing the arrest, the authorities have emphasized that the 16 suspects have been working for years, since 2021, building outside connections, storage facilities, and hiding the weapons and the parts.
Israeli medics are refusing to serve in Gaza. Despite decades of service and a growing shortage of reservists after 18 months of conflict in Gaza, some are cutting ties with the army in moral opposition to the war.
It's not common for reservists or Israelis in general to be this publicly critical of the war. But we have seen in recent days a trend that's proving quite worrying for the Israeli leadership of reservists and veterans coming out against the war in political opposition.
The National's Thomas Helm reports from Jerusalem.
I spoke to Israeli medical personnel who had withdrawn their service in moral opposition to the Gaza war. And the medical personnel I spoke to also were aware of a new layer of complication. By leaving the forces, they were not leaving as fighters, as people who would do killing and bombing, but as people who would provide treatment, both mental and physical treatment. And it went against, they said, their nature as physicians. But they were all convinced that by withdrawing their service, even as medical professionals, they were doing the right thing and preventing more injury in the future to both Israelis and Palestinians.
Last week, almost 1,000 veterans and reservists of the Israeli Air Force signed a letter calling on the government to immediately retrieve the hostages in Gaza through a deal with Hamas. It also called for an end to fighting in the Strip, which it said was now driven by the political interests of the government. The military then announced it would dismiss reservists who signed the letter, but later about 150 Navy veterans wrote their own, echoing the same message.
The two main accusations leveled against the war and the government is that the Israeli leadership is not prioritizing the release of hostages held in the Strip, which is arguably the foremost political issue in Israel today. Indeed, it's been this way for months now. The other accusation of this growing group of military personnel who are angry at the government is that the war is being conducted without any proper strategic objectives and goals, and that it is simply being done to prolong the coalition of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Polling consistently shows that people in Israel are troubled by the direction of the war in Gaza. The government's approach to recovering hostages held in the Strip has drawn large public protests. Judicial officials in Turkey have rejected an appeal seeking the release of former Istanbul mayor Ekrem Imamoglu pending the outcome of his trial for corruption. That's according to reports from state-run media. Imamoglu was a prospective challenger to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in presidential elections set for 2028. He was detained on March 19th and formally held on corruption charges 4 days later. His arrest and subsequent removal from office have triggered protests in Turkey. Critics of Erdogan say the arrest is politically motivated. Government officials deny that accusation. On the day of his arrest, Imamoglu's Republican People's Party chose him as its candidate to stand for president in 2028. He was re-elected to lead Istanbul last year for a second term, beating a candidate from Erdogan's ruling AKP. Imamoglu is being held at a prison west of Istanbul. He's accused of accepting bribes, misconduct in office, unlawfully recording personal data, and bid rigging. These are all charges that he denies. That's all for this morning's headlines. You can get these stories and follow updates at our site. Yasmin Altaji, The National.